Welcome to the Entree Pastors Podcast on YouTube. This is a show that helps pastors think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs. Well, hello there, and welcome to the Entree Pastors Podcast on YouTube. My name is John Sanders. I am one of the co-founders of Entree Pastors and one of the co-hosts of this podcast. And I just want to say thank you for tuning in this week to join us for this week's episode. We've got a fun conversation to share with you, a pastor in West Virginia who has a really interesting business of building knives. He's an outdoorsman in addition to being a pastor, and he's turned part of his passion of being an outdoorsman into a business building knives for other people. Incidentally, you're also going to hear about his wife, who has a business of her own, has a very successful YouTube channel built around the art that she does. And so we love this. At Entree Pastors, we love celebrating stories of pastors who are doing great in church ministry and also doing great out in the marketplace, building additional streams of revenue for their families through business and finding new ways of doing ministry through those platforms as well. So we're excited to share this conversation we had recently with our friend Josh Blount. Check this out. Well, Josh, it is our pleasure to have you as a guest on the Entree Pastors Podcast, man. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here. Thank you both for having me.
Yeah.
You bet. I've been looking forward to our conversation since we got introduced by a mutual friend, because I think it's safe to say, Les, correct me if I'm wrong, Josh is going to be the first knife building pastor that we've got on the show. Is that, I don't think we've had.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a safe bet. Yeah.
Probably a small population.
That's cool, man. We'll get into all of this. So Josh, tell us a little bit about where you are in the world and the church you pastor. Kind of give us your ministry side of the story, and then we'll start talking some of the business side too.
Yeah, sure. Glad to. So I pastor in a little town in West Virginia, a town called Franklin, West Virginia. We say we have 800 people in one stoplight, and a teeny town, and love living here. I've been here as a pastor for 16 years now, and served with two other guys here on staff. It's been a wonderful church home for us. Came here as a single guy. They were tolerant of all the mistakes that a young man learning to pastor makes, and I had two friends co-pastoring with me who have more experience combined than I have been alive, and they were good guides to me early on and still are. So it's a wonderful situation where I love pastoring this church, love being in a rural area in the mountains in West Virginia, and let some opportunities for some enjoyable other pursuits like making knives on the side. But this is my primary calling. This is the place the Lord's planted us and place that we love to be as a family.
That's cool. Now, are you born and raised West Virginia?
So born and raised in Virginia, but in Southwest Virginia, kind of down in the western part of the state. So it's a pretty similar area growing up. In fact, part of my backstory, our mutual friend, we met in college where we both studied wildlife biology. And I told people I went to college to study wildlife biology because I wanted to live in the mountains and not have to deal with people. And during my college years, God began changing my heart. And I say he gave me half of what I wanted, changed my heart to where I get to care for people, but still let me live in the mountains and have a place where I can enjoy being outdoors and living in a small town.
That's cool. Well, I'm a small town guy as well. I'm in South Dakota, which the whole state is rural. There's really no metropolitan area of South Dakota anywhere. So anyway, I have a heart for the small town rural church as well. So I feel like we're kindred spirits, and Les is from Alabama. So need I say more? So
yeah,
there you go.
Struggles to spell rural. So that wasn't nice. I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry, Les.
No, but originally I'm your neighbor because my home's Kentucky originally.
Yeah.
So not quite that part, but close enough.
Yeah.
Yep. And Les is into outdoor stuff as well, not just golf and stuff, but he hunts. So I'm assuming we haven't gotten into all your passions yet, but I'm assuming hunting's got to be part of it. If
hunting's in there, it's kind of a given. If you live in West Virginia and like knives, you're going to end up in the
That's right.
Cool. So are you like the lead pastor, or like what's your role on the church?
Yeah, so serves as an associate pastor. Like I said, there's three of us who are all serving, all kind of have some sidelines. It's just small town that's worked out well for us. Our church is wonderfully takes care of us. In no cases we feel like the church is trying to make our lives difficult. We're blessed, but in a small town, it helps to have um, other income sources. So I serve as associate pastor, primarily preaching every other week and lead our worship ministry. And you know how it is in a small town, in a small church, you wear a lot of different hats, various things, whatever's
Right.
you. So yeah.
I always joked with our church about having one of those automated phone systems, like to speak to this department, press 1, and that department, press 2, and it all comes to my desk,
Yep.
So I thought that would have been kind of funny to waste
Yep.
people's time on the phone before getting to me. But
Yep. Yep.
I get it. I think a lot of pastors do. So cool. Well, we've already mentioned it a few times that your side hustle, a little bit of side income that you're developing as a business is around building knives. I'd love to get into that, share the story of that. And then I've got a number of questions we'll talk about just in terms of how you got started and,
Yep.
any challenges that you faced along the way and how we can even serve you now. Like if there's something we could do to help boost you to the next level. So tell us a story, man. How did you get into building knives for people?
Yeah, so I started this. This could take a little bit of the history how I got into it. Started making knives when I was 13, and grew up in the outdoors and didn't have a lot of disposable income and saw a knife that I wanted, thought I can't afford it, so next best thing, I'll try to make it. And started grinding on old files and sticking antlers on them, and was blessed early on in teen years to find a couple men who were skilled in the craft that lived in the general area. I would get my dad to drive me and then later drive myself when I got wheels and go to their shops. But had men who mentored me and taught me elements of the trade. When I left to go to college, I had to put my shop in storage because my family sold their farm and moved. And long story short, it's been bouncing around in storage for a number of years while I moved, settled, went to school, and finally got a home where we had space for a shop. And along with that same time, my then 8-year-old son was starting to see the show Forged in Fire on the History Channel, and said, "That looks really cool. Could we do that?" And that was all the spark I needed to say, "Oh yeah, I'd love to do that again. Let's get the shop back up."
That's
But
great.
that's been important for me because it's a way. I have a lot of hobbies, but with 3 small kids, I look for things that I can do that are with my family and not taking me away. And so my son's interested in this. My daughters like the leatherworking part of it. So when I'm making sheaths, they come out and join me, and my son and I make stuff every year. So that's been it's another way that it fits a lifestyle and what God's called me to do, care for my family first. And I can enjoy that's been part of my past since teenage years and do it with my family. And realizing that a lot of the ways these kind of skills are passed on is that mentoring relationship, like I had with a few guys. And that fits well in, kind of a pastor's calling. The ability to say, "Hey, I'm going to go fire up the forge on Saturday and make some knives or make a billet of Damascus steel. Anybody want to come hang out and watch, spend time together?" It's a kind of a good complementary set of pastimes that it fits and serves my main calling, and it's something I love to do. But also the mentoring aspect of it, handing on skills, whether it's to my son or other guys in the church or community, that's been an additional blessing, and one reason why I focus more on this than other things that I've been interested in the past.
I love that. I grew up in a pastor's home, and I'm sure many in our audience can relate to this, but I think as a general rule, pastors don't do well having fun. Like they get so caught up in the work of ministry, and it becomes this all-consuming thing that if they're honest, they turn around and go, "Man, it's been a long time since I've done something just for my own enjoyment and something that I thought was fun." And I'll say one more thing to that. I think a caveat might be that, and this is a broad generalization, but that people that are a little bit smaller church and maybe more rural context have do a better job of having those hobbies maybe than the big city guys. And I only say that because that's been my context. But I've known a lot of big city pastors, including the one in which I grew up in that home, and saw a lot of work, but not a lot of hobbies. It's like as the church grew, the hobbies became less and less. So I love that you've got some outlets in your life, some things that you can just go do for fun. I love that those things can cross over and be tools in ministry. How did you begin to look at this thing that you were enjoying doing from a craftsman standpoint, and just it brings me joy to like, hey, there's a potential for profit here. There's a business opportunity here. When did you
Yeah.
start monetizing that hobby
Yeah.
and skill?
Yeah. So I started it's kind of like with that gap when my shop was in storage. I feel like I sort of picked back up where I left off years ago. So in teenage years, I briefly thought I wanted to just be a craftsman for my life. So I started in late teenage years trying to market this and build a bit of a name and get to be known in the knife making community selling knives. That was as much because I loved it and just wanted to do what I loved, as also realizing you can't spend a ton of time on this and develop your craft without putting some money into it. So it either becomes a sinkhole where just pouring money in, or say, I want to develop this as a skill that I can market, help make pay for itself. And I kind of picked back up when I started, once I got my shop set back up and figured out, made sure I could remember what I'd done before, and kind of let my fingers relearn their memory. Then thought, well, I can either just tinker at this on the side, or if I really want to develop it, then I'm going to have to find some way to monetize it, at least so it can pay for the investments that are required in it and make it a more legitimate place to pursue expertise, because there's a lot of skill sets, a lot of different components that are involved in making a good quality knife. So to make that something that's more than just an occasional hobby, I thought I need to start trying to develop this as at least sell what I produce and see where it goes. So today, full disclosure, I'm still in the sell what I make and see where it goes phase of making stuff, putting them up for sale, sometimes taking commissions. One of the things when you do a craft, there's always this balance between making the same thing over and over again to fulfill commissions that can generate income, but also be more stifling to the creativity side of it. And then there's if I just make what I want to make, and where I have creative ideas, then people don't want to buy it, and I end up with all these knives sitting on my shelves that haven't turned over. So there's always a balance striking there in this particular kind of business stream, where one of my mentors says that I'm always kind of chasing my own boredom. I want to make what I'm excited to make, and then try to sell that, and then flip around and think, would I be excited to fill a commission or take a couple roles there? So I kind of go back and forth between those. But it's developed out of the idea of, I think this is something I want to pursue for develop expertise, continue to develop my skills, both to be able to pass them on and learn the wisdom that comes from learning any kind of craft at a deep level. That's a whole nother discussion about how that, I think there's just merit in our technological society to doing something with your hands that isn't just a passing thing, but something you work really hard to develop expertise. It humbles you. It brings you into contact with God's world that he made, that has all of its characteristics, whether I want him to or not. Iron behaves the way it wants to behave, whether I wish it or will it to do something different. So to develop that kind of expertise, spend the time on, I thought I need to get some kind of return out of this. And the business sort of developed out of that.
So, like, where are you at in that business journey? I know you said you're kind of at the starting gates with that, but like, do you have a full on, LLC? Are you like setting this up as a legitimate business, or is it still just kind of a project on the side that you're moving in more of that direction?
Yeah, still more of the project on the side. I don't have an LLC yet. Set up a website where, and just recently transitioned that to be an e-commerce website, so that rather than just selling, word of mouth, I can market those. Did our first show last year. So my son and I, he made 6 knives. Let's see. Yeah, no, he made 4 knives for the show. And then I brought, I think, 12, and I sold 1, and he sold everything he had, and had people giving him things. And
no kidding.
The power of a 10-year-old sitting behind a table saying, I made this with my hands. I can't compete with it. So we're still kind of tapping into that. We'd like to do a show or 2 yearly and kind of build it into our life, our rhythm as a family. But try to keep it within bounds, because my wife also has a business, and we're homeschooling 3 kids and pastoring full time. So keeping things where all the priorities are sustainable is something we have to work at. But from the business side on my end, not an LLC yet. Established it, trying to figure out our yearly rhythm of where do we sell at shows, do we market online? There's the custom knife world is its own world, so still kind of learning those contours. Where do you market? And then I love to make stuff for friends and people in the community. Most of my sales probably come from local local commissions, and then occasionally collectors. So I'm still figuring, navigating both of those. Which ones of those do we want to primarily be?
Yeah, well, it sounds like just some free advice you didn't ask for. The next show you do, your 10-year-old made everything on the table, whether he did or not, right? Like he's the guy, right?
Father-son project. Yeah, yeah,
he's
that's
the
right.
front man for everything. So
That's right. Yeah, it was
that's
great. He had a
great.
blast. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I love that your kids can see that, and get to participate. That's huge.
Yeah.
A lot of fun.
That's a significant part of it for me. A confirmation that, I think this is something I should spend time on, rather than something to say that's good in its place, but it's a smaller part of my life. Just it fits with a number of other things that are already clear priorities the Lord's given us. Community life, investing in men. I tell people, forging is a great way to build friendships with men, because you spend a lot of time looking at the fire, heating up a piece of steel, and then you have hard physical activity for a bit, and then you stick it back in the fire, let it get hot, talk. So all those priorities, kind of confirmation. Yeah, this is a good part of our life to add in and focus on at this season.
Man, we've got someone in our community that has built a business around archery, and they've actually created, talks that they do in churches, and they're going to expand that into corporate stuff. Like, man, you could do the exact same thing. You could preach a sermon with the forge going right there, and find ways to monetize a men's group that really has nothing to do with knife building at its core, but uses that as an entryway to it. So I love that. So here's a question. Maybe this would be a good transition point. One of the things that we find often in our community is, we serve pastors who are definitely sick and tired of being financially stuck or just barely getting by. They're open to the concept of doing better financially, and our answer is always business. It's like, man, let's turn to the marketplace instead of trying to get more out of our church, because like many churches are just not in that position, even if they wanted to be able to really provide well. So it's like, man, if we turn you loose as a business owner, the ceiling is removed from your limiting, your earning potential. Like there's really not a limitation there. So then that brings up a lot of mindset issues for many pastors. Like, is it even okay for me to have another thing going on the side? And what if that thing does better than my pastoring gig? What if I actually got to where I was making some significant money through a business? Like, is that even okay? So I bring some of those issues up to just say, what about you, as you are just getting going in this? Like, did you have any of those mindset struggles of, what does this mean in terms of my identity as a pastor? Is it okay for me to be in business? What say you to that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I just did some personal reflections on that. I think there are questions thinking through my identity that I've had to walk through, wrestle through. I laugh as I say that, because in my case, it's not been, wow, what happens if I start to make piles of money from making knives? And I'd have to think through that. Even the full-time master smiths I know say nobody gets rich making knives. You do it for the love of the craft. But then there's a whole host of questions that I think, even more broadly as a pastor, where do I find my identity? What is an appropriate other outlet? How do I reconcile, how do I walk through some of the tensions of just navigating, money is required in these various areas. So for my own soul, the wrestle more comes in the how does this flow out of my identity in Christ and my calling to serve his people? Is it in competition with that? Am I desiring something that I shouldn't desire? And the safety outlet, I would say, for how I process those kind of questions is just being honest with my wife and my team, but especially my wife. She knows me the best, and she can say, no, that's you just wanting something, that you're being discontent. And no, that's actually something I think you should follow that. So, that dividing line between, is this an ungodly discontent that needs to get killed in my heart, or is this a godly ambition that could develop for something that fits with the Lord's call on my life and purposes? And just having my wife there to say, this is one you should spend time on, or no, that's probably more discontent. And like many things, it's not only it wasn't only like, as we talk about starting it as a business, it's sort of an ongoing, hey, do you see me? Is this detracting from our life, our calling, our family life, and our primarily my calling as a pastor, or is this supplementing it? Do you see, am I getting tugged in any wrong ways? So I'm just grateful to have a spouse who can be a sounding board on that. And because she's also a business owner and her business is also art related, and creativity related, she understands and knows the pitfalls inside and out, and can say, hey, I think you're being discontent here. You need to dial back your expectations in that, and no, here I think you should pursue that, work hard at it. I'm behind you on that. I support you, do that. That's been a safety outlet to kind of think through those mindset issues and think through, where am I pursuing something that requires my energy and effort to please the Lord? Do something out of the desire to be an entrepreneur and take steps for the glory of God. Or wait a minute, you're pushing against a wall that God has deliberately erected there in the path. A door that's shut. I couldn't process those kind of questions, and still couldn't without having good outside counsel, somebody who knows me and says, this is what I see right now.
Yeah, that's good. I have another question I'm going to ask around, but since I'm going to poke around in just a minute, but you mentioned your wife's business, and we don't have to go deep down that rabbit hole, but what you mentioned, it deals with art. I'd just be curious, what is it that she's doing?
So she's in the world of what's called fluid painting, which is a particular kind of painting where rather than brush strokes, it's mixing paints in different ways and pouring them across canvases. I think it's kind of developed here recently. She, right before our youngest child was born, she said, I think this would be a fun outlet for me. I just want to try it. And it took off. And then she said, I think I might try starting a YouTube channel. Are you okay with that? And this is where we have the same kind of conversations on her end. I said, yeah, I think we can swing that. And now she has 23,000 subscribers and is a minor celebrity in the fluid painting world, and goes well beyond what I do in the knife world. So Anna Blount Art is where she does her stuff.
This interview is officially canceled, and we're going to reschedule with your wife.
Right.
So we're going to bring her on.
Yeah, that's where the real wisdom is.
No, well, this is going to be good then, because I'm going to ask a question, and it's going to put you on the spot a little bit. But so you've got really two businesses represented in your home, a ministry home, and both of these businesses at the end of the day are connected to a form of art, because even what you do as a craftsman, there is an art element to that. It's a creative process. So here's my question, and then I've got a resource to share really with the audience as a whole, but I might just see where it lands with you. The question is, are you charging enough for the products that you create? Does your wife charge enough? And do you charge enough? Or are you running into that quote unquote ministry mindset / artist mindset that says, I couldn't dare charge for this stuff?
Yeah, well, I'll be curious to hear what resource you recommend, because that is one of the pressing challenges in thinking through. Just, what do you set the price of a knife at? What do you set the price of a completed painting at? I think we both wrestle with that. And especially if you sell to friends or people that a small community, most people, if I'm selling locally, most people know it is a challenge. And I don't know that I have a good answer for it. Try to, other than if I price it way too high and nobody buys it, maybe that's a cue. But knowing the lower end, what's a reasonable expectation? That's a challenge when it's something you've created, especially if you, there's few pieces I think, I've done a really great job on that. I should get a higher price for that. There's a lot like, man, I know the flaws. I know it's not the guy who taught me's work. It's way better. So it can be a challenge. So I'm curious to hear what resource you recommend.
Well, this is we're not recording this live. So if I say something in this conversation, I'm going to treat this a little bit more like a coaching call. And if for a minute, and if like take that out, I will. We don't have to share this with our broader audience. But here's my sense. My sense with most people that are either A, artists, or B, pastors, and you've got the best of both worlds, it sounds like. They don't charge enough because they don't value. As pastors, it's a different angle, but generally speaking, we get taught to really devalue our time and what we bring to the table. It's often not valued in many ways. Certainly financial is one. And then artists, it's a different element. It's what you said. You're the one creating it. People higher up the ladder, so to speak. The flaws of what you see. You see it immediately. You don't see it through the eyes of someone who could not even fathom creating this painting or this knife or whatever the work of art is. And so we instantly devalue it and argue against ourselves, negotiate against ourselves. So my sense is that you probably are both charging under what you should be. And I don't even know what you're charging. So just let that land where it is. There is the book. Here's the resource. Have you ever heard of the book called Real Artists Don't Starve?
I haven't. No.
Les, is that Jeff Goins?
Yes.
author of that
Yep,
book.
he is.
So, and by the way,
That'd be a good one. That would be a
he's
really good read.
he's playing on that phrase, the starving artist, which we kind of stole that at Entre Pastors, and we talk about, blowing up the narrative of the starving pastor, because it's a real thing in ministry. It's pastors who just go, well, I guess I'll just be broke, and certainly churches and Christians that go, yep, you should be broke because you're a pastor, and we're okay with that. And artists have that same thing. It's like that myth of the starving artist. So that book, Real Artists Don't Starve, challenges that head on and talks about how the true, like, artists of the Renaissance, they were not these broke, struggling artists that we've romanticized. They were shrewd business people, and they charged effectively for the work that they did. And it just unpacks that whole thing. So I'd encourage you and your wife to pick that up.
That sounds like a good resource. Do that.
Yeah, Real Artists Don't Starve. But here's the thing. This is broad I don't care what your business is. We deal with this with our pastors who we're helping launch businesses. We often see them struggling when it comes to starting to charge, because, again, for years in pastoral ministry, they had a fairly small salary, and a lot of expectations come with that small salary. It's just what you do. You're a pastor. You just do this for free, or for very low cost. And now I have a business that doesn't. If you try to operate a business with that mindset, you don't stay in business very long. Right. You have a hobby, and it costs you
John,
something.
I will add this, that I did look at Josh's craft. I looked at the knives on his website. They're very well done. That's no surprise. And I thought at first they're not cheap. Like,
okay, good.
I don't know what the range should be, Josh. I haven't done any research, but just at first blush, as John and I are both outdoorsmen, and so we're in that world some. You're probably in the ballpark, I think.
Good.
So, in fact, I was pleased by that for the very reasons that John just mentioned. So, I think you've got, from what I can gather anyway, what the value would be. I think that if there's enough there to where it's like, ooh, that's not a cheap knife. I mean, there's a really, they're well done. They're legacy pieces almost, right? I mean, there's something that you could hand down even from generation to generation, and something special, like somebody would show and say, hey, that belonged to my dad, or that belonged to my granddad, something like that. And I think one of the issues for you when you're really, when and if you're ready to take that to another level, you're a young guy, you got a young family, so time's on your side. But I believe if you wanted to develop that and develop a team and scale it, a lot of your focus would probably be on the marketing side of it, and getting in front of the right people. The world's a big place, and so even the sort of the niche market that you're in, my goodness, when you start talking about the people that would appeal to, it's plenty of folks for what you and a business could handle.
Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah. Idea of a legacy piece that is part of, when you're creating an artist, you're creating something on your own, sort of a pushback against the consumerist mindset that things are made for one-time use. Mass produce it as cheaply as you can. It's part of the tension of selling in that environment when you can buy a knife way cheaper. You can do a painting that's mass produced, but trying to learn to value and think through then how do you set a value to what's something that is unique, one of a kind, that requires long years of skill to get to the point of being able to do that, which then brings you back in there. I'm aware of all the places where I'm still not there yet, but on that journey, trying to make that kind of piece. So that's helpful.
Yeah, this isn't something that people could watch a couple of YouTube videos and sort of figure it out. So, and I think that on the ministry side of things, those two worlds fit real well together. And again, I don't know how you've obviously done some of this before, but man, I think there's enough movement in even maybe men's ministry gatherings, or let's just say events where churches are using outdoors type themes to be an attractive gathering, reason to gather for people to share the gospel, or just to reach more people or something, or maybe reach a segment of men, something that they would relate to, then I think, like John was saying a minute ago, man, you could develop just a handful of talks, and with your network already, probably in church world, have plenty, probably all you want with a young family, to keep you busy on some stages, and probably at some point there's a book in there, probably, if you wanted that,
Yeah.
to expand the platform.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've got a few other thoughts as well, and I'm keying off something you said earlier about one of your mentors saying you're not going to make money in this, and I sort of get that, but I always challenge that. Like I'm like,
Right.
I bet we can, and I think if we looked at all the different ways, yes, you're going to be limited because your goal as an artist, as a craftsman, is not to mass produce these things. Your goal is to pour your skill, effort, labor, and that doesn't scale very well because we all have 24 hours in a day and you've got all these other commitments in your life. So we can only do so much of that, creating these one-off masterpieces, fulfilling orders one at a time. But there are other things you could do. Like you could teach other people how to do this. So you could develop courses or content on how to get into this yourself, how to become your own skilled tradesman. Lord knows we need more of those in this world, not less. We need more people who understand how to build and create and fix things and all of that. And then, yes, going down the route that Les was going down, like I can totally see where you could develop a talk. You could have one that is gospel oriented and it's for the church community. You could also package this for a corporate setting where and every time you speak, by the way, you give away a knife. It's a custom part of your, package that you offer. And again, if none of this sounds awesome to you, then don't. This is just Jon and Les dreaming with your business for a minute. So, anyway,
I appreciate it. Yeah.
But here's what I want our audience to hear, because at Entre Pastors, we often talk about 3 different pathways that we encourage people to choose one. One is the information-based pathway, one is e-commerce, and then one is service-based industry. And really, you almost have two for sure. Like this is certainly a service-based thing that could then start, building some streams of revenue around that information-based pathway. And technically, if you're fulfilling orders online and shipping stuff all over the world, you're kind of in that e-commerce space too, a little bit. So that's where it's kind of fun just to examine that and talk about how you could, grow that out and develop that a little bit.
Yeah. And I will say, if there are pastors listening who have some kind of craft or skill, whether it's knives or some other category, in the knife world, what I've watched, the guys who are full-time and making this as a business, including the guy who made the comment, you don't get rich doing this. He is a full-time knife maker and has supported a family and done a good job. They merge all of those different avenues. I'm creating a product. I'm also creating content for people who want to learn. I'm selling tools that are specialized, that maybe a tool that I've designed that does this particular task, and then I market it to that audience. It seems like the best business minds in the knife world are harmonizing all of those different ways and thinking of, a lot of different avenues to sell what they know, whether that's the knowledge or the tools they've developed for a particular task. And that seems like that would be scalable to a lot of different crafts. If you think that not just I create one thing and I sell that, but how can I market what I have, the skills that allowed me to be that kind of a craftsman?
As I'm hearing you talk, I'm realizing I actually know 2 other pastors that make knives. Now, neither of them, I think, do it. One for sure is not interested in doing it as a business. It's just a passion, kind of an art on the side. And the other guy, I think, has sold some. So now I'm like, man, you might start a podcast for pastors.
I was thinking that too, John.
There you go.
He's got a good voice. It's scary how much we think alike, but there's a podcast waiting to happen right there, man.
And that's something you can find a niche on anything. I love podcasts.
Right. That is a niche market I would not have thought of.
Yeah. Pastor knife builders. But anyway, well, this is good, man. So maybe one more question for you, and I'm going to ask you to dream forward a little bit. Like if, 2-3 years down the road, things are going better than you thought they ever could be, as far as the knife making side of life is concerned, like what does that look like for you? What's the dream if all things are just cruising along beautifully?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think what I'd love to see happen is obviously continue to get better as a craftsman. Because I think that's one of the just pursuing excellence in this part of my life, even though it's not the entirety of my life, but continue developing that skill set. There are some mile markers just within the craft, some journeyman smith, master smith level. I'm hopefully on the road. I'd love to test in the next 2 to 3 years, test for a journeyman smith ranking, which that's developing the skill level, and then expand the business enough to support a shop where I could welcome people in and do more teaching, and having people in. We've already got a group of guys who are excited about things and work on it together, but I've got a friend who's got a young man. He's friends. I said, we'd like to make a sword, and to upgrade to make a sword requires some additional tools. Like, I'd love to get to the point to say, hey, if you have the idea, we have the capacity here. Love to teach you how to do it, pass on these skills, have a shop that people in the community can come and be involved with, and start out ahead. And it's the same thing for my son. I'd love for him in 2 to 3 years, if he decides I want to make this a part of my life as a business, or maybe if that's the direction the Lord calls him. I don't know that that'll happen, but I'd love it to be an open door for him where he could have a major leg up on where I started at 12 and say, if this is something that you want to develop and be a craftsman for your life, I can help start you down the road in a much farther along place than I would have been. So it's those kind of categories, developing the skills and expanding it to be able to pass those on to other people.
That's cool. I was going to ask you one other quick question, going back to your wife's thing. I think I've seen videos of this stuff. Does she do this stuff where she puts paint in a bucket and then it swings with a rope back and forth and makes all these cool?
Yeah, she's done some of those. Yeah, it's all basically manipulating patterns and layers. So she's done some more geometric pattern from getting gravity going, spilling it. She's got a ton of different techniques, and she's kind of developed and popularized, I think, one in particular that she's sort of known for doing that on her own. So very creative. It not just another realm where the glory of God can be explored by creativity and all these different things he's built into his world.
Yeah, we are created in his image. Therefore, we are all creators. Yeah. And that's where I love this, man. I love this conversation. And I've seen those videos. I'm not going to lie. I've thought about doing it, not as a business, just because I'm like, I'm not like super artistic. It's like that turns out some really cool stuff, man. The way that paint like all melds together or swings around, and the pattern it creates, like, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So that's what her business is doing that. But then what's really taken off is the creating the content and knowledge. So she was before we got married, she was studying video. So she's really good at video, and makes very good quality video showing here's how I do it, here's how I think about it, here's start to finish. And that's its whole separate world, another area.
I love it. Well, I tell you what, can I get some links to, like, how do people connect with you and your knives? And let's just plug your wife's business as well. Tell us about her channel and how people can check that out. And we'll link all that in the show notes. So tell our listeners where to go to find you guys.
So my page is blount.knives.com, and I have to, yes, that is a pun, Blount Knives. It's actually spelled Blount. So it looks like Blount, but if you're in the know, it's a blunt knife you're buying. So blount.knives.com, that's where I have all my stuff. And both of us use social media, but it's linked on those pages. Her YouTube channel is Anna Blount Art, spelled the same way. And she'll have, I think, probably by the time this podcast launches, in the next 48 hours, her website, her e-commerce website is going to be set up at annabluntart.com. So that's where you can find both of us.
Very cool. Well, man, this has been fun. So when our mutual connection just said, hey, here's a guy that makes knives, I didn't know. This has been really interesting. I was like, I didn't know to what degree you were building this out as a business. And I thought, well, let's bring him on the show and have a conversation. So I've had a lot of fun, and we wish you all the best. And I would just say, man, if there's anything that Entre Pastors can do to be of service to you or your wife, either of y'all's businesses, man, we'd love to celebrate what you're doing and walk alongside you. So thanks for coming on the show and sharing with us.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for having me. And thanks for your kind work. It's been fun to be with you guys. Thanks.
Well, hey, thanks for watching this episode of the Entre Pastors podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. If you'd like to get connected to other pastors who are learning to think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs, then we invite you to check us out on Facebook. Just search for the Entre Pastors Connect group, answer a few of our simple questions there, and we'd love to include you in the conversations. And if you're really ready to go to the next level, then we invite you to join our Entre Pastors membership community. When you become a monthly subscriber, you will receive access to courses, exclusive community, and coaching that will help you along in your own Entre Pastors journey. If there's anything else we can do to serve you, please visit us at entrepastors.com, and we will do our best to serve you there. God bless everybody. See you soon.